Hello, my name's Barry Cale and I'm talking to you today about Cyprium Metals. Cyprium Metals was formed with a strategy to build a mid-tier Australian copper company. The management team have significant experience in project recovery and undervalued assets and a strong background on development, financing and construction of projects. We have recent experience on an IP on copper heap leach, particularly sulphide copper heap leach. And we consider copper to be a favourable energy metal. Obviously, everything that to do with the energy revolution that's taking place today has some sort of input from copper, going from our mobile phones to our computers to electric vehicles to power supply to transmission lines. We are listed on the ASX and we were formed a couple of years ago. Our first transaction, we obtained the Murchison copper project, which is the Hollandaire deposit and the Nanadie Well deposit. And there's a scoping study underway to assess the optimal project metrics for those projects. And then we recently announced the acquisition of the Metals X copper portfolio, subject to shareholder approval, which is what the majority of this talk is about. You can see there the team's made up of Gary Coleman, myself, Nick Rowley, financial bloke, Wayne Apted, who's our CFO, Peter, our geologist, Mike, our chief metallurgist, and Terry is our project development. All worked together before and part of this strategy to go forward with the business. So the acquisition of the Metals X copper assets is a transformational acquisition for us. We've been looking at copper assets in Australia, as I said, and we've reviewed over 250 projects, wanting a near-term development project. In this time, these copper assets always came to the top, and we've been trying to negotiate through this project for quite some years. And finally, we've got to a point where we're transacting subject to shareholder approval, which will happen in the next month. We've got the Nifty Copper project, which is 658,000 odd tonnes of contained copper. It has infrastructure around it with a replacement value of about $300 million. That's concentrators, SXEW, camp, power sources, airstrips for landing aircraft. There's as I said, a large resource there. We also get Murchison, where there's nearly 500,000 tonne of copper metal to take a total transaction of 1.1 million tonne of copper. And we also get the exploration joint venture with IGO, where IGO are going to farm into the exploration tenements by spending $32 million in the adjacent tenements over 6.5 years. The total transaction cost for us is about 3 cents Australian a pound, which is pretty cheap. And it allows us to build that mid-tier copper mining business by acquiring this portfolio of projects. So I'll just go into a bit more detail about what our intent is. At Nifty is a substantial resource based on a granted state agreement. Discovered quite some time ago. There was an open pit mine there, then underground, the open pit treated oxide transitional material, the underground treated sulphide, ran into some finance issues, the underground's been shut down, and our concept is to go into a large open pit to mine about 400,000 tonne of copper resource in that open pit, as well as retreat about 17 million tonnes of ore material at about 0.5% copper in a heap leach retreat. Our vision is 20,000 tonnes of copper, metal plate on site for 20 years. And we do this by firstly doing the retreat of the heap leach on new pads. We mine the open pit for oxide transitional material, and then later on we take the sulphide material out in the open pit. And as I said, that will go for about 20 years. You can see the site in this diagram. You can see the old open pit, and at it that goes into underground, the old SXEW plant that needs refurbishment, the processing plant, which is a concentrator that'll do, its nameplate is 2.8 million tonne per annum, the old heap leach pads, the airstrip, and the village waste dumps, tailings dams. So all the infrastructure associated with that, gas power plant, the whole lot. The second project we get out of this is Murchison copper project, and we have the potential to unlock a substantial value from this copper resource. As I said, it's nearly 500,000 tonne of copper in resource. It's not closed off. There's a camp there already, And in our pipeline of projects, this is the one that we see happening second. So we intend to plate copper at Nifty by 2022, and then we'll move on to Maroochydore, and we'll do 20,000 tonnes of copper for 20 years at Maroochydore. Thirdly, our Murchison copper project, located around Kew and Meekatharra. And again, we've got a substantial resource there. We're drilling. We've just finished drilling there now, and we're waiting for assays out of the assay labs, and we expect to expand that resource as well. And that will be the third pipeline project. So you can see we go from Nifty to Maroochydore to Murchison. In 5 years, we could potentially be a 60,000 tonne copper producer, which is mid-tier on the ASX and puts us into that void that doesn't exist. A bit about the Patterson Exploration Project, as I said, funded by IGO. You can see our tenements that we're going to be mining off here on Nifty and here at Maroochydore, and then the darker blue around the outside is where IGO are going to be spending their money. And as you can see, right in the middle of the hot Patterson province, which is a hot copper gold province, near Telford, Callaghan's, Havieron and Winu, which you've probably heard about. So we're right in the middle of it. So we're pretty bullish about that. It's a large tenement holding, and as I said, IGO are spending 32 million over 6.5 years to fund that. So our development strategy from this transaction, we've got priority operational projects, which is Nifty, heap leach and open pit, oxide transitional. We get that going, we finance that. Then we look at extending mine life. We go to the sulphide open pit. Then when we finish, or don't finish that, when that's operating, that's making money, we have Murchison Copper Project, we have Maroochydore, we have Nifty Underground. And then on top of that, we have our exploration projects, which you can see there in that slide. And you can see our other greenfield and resource extension opportunities at Murchison and at Nifty and Maroochydore, which we haven't really talked about. So in short, significant portfolio of copper projects, 1.1 million tonne of contained copper, a clear strategy to commence plating copper by the end of 2022, experienced board with proven track record, numerous longer-term organic development and exploration options, and we fill a growing ASX investment void in copper, and well-funded placement to execute a strategy. So we've actually placed $90 million, so we're fully funded for our transaction price, and we'll end up with money in the bank, and we'll move to finance and we'll get this project going. If you want to know more, make an appointment on the planning calendar and have a chat to me about it. Thanks.